Hey everyone, and welcome to After Hours. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at 3 different quilt blocks that I found at a local flea market, and we're going to look at how we're going to quilt them up. As always, I've taken pictures and printed them off so we can kind of sketch out what we're going to do. And then at the end, the last block we're going to do is actually an antique quilt block. So I want to talk to you about needles and thread when you're getting into fabrics on those really antique blocks that are super delicate and can have issues quilting and keeping up its longevity down the line. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to our channel. It's gonna be right down there at the bottom right-hand corner. After you click on that subscribe button, make sure you click on the little bell so you can stay notified whenever we post new videos or whenever we go live here at After Hours. So let's jump right into it and start with the first block in tonight's episode. So this is the first block that we're going to work on tonight. In this block, I wanted to use the basic 8 to kind of separate it out and place one pattern over the whole thing. Just giving the idea again that it's okay to cross over the piecing lines when you do this. So we're going to use our basic 8, and this is Stencil 1959. And when we're on the quilt, we're going to set that on there. We're going to grab our pounce powder, pounce over that so we have our lines, and that will be on the fabric. Now because we're drawing, I'm just going to use an Expo marker and give myself some dotted lines to stay within. But it's always good to take a picture of your quilt blocks that you're working with and print them out so you can kind of design on the go. That way you have an idea and a blueprint what you're working on as you get to the quilt. I'm also going to open up our basic 8 1 and 2 book. It's got a bunch of different designs, and I'm going all the way down to page 60 on this one. And this is the design that I wanted to throw over the block. Now, in the basic 8 book, it has arrows showing you how to kind of draw it out. I personally like to do my feathers first because I don't like to do feathers backwards, quote unquote. So I am going to do the feather and then wrap around with the stem to come back to the center. But we're starting and stopping in the center. Always take note of your design and seeing how it works directional wise. So each quadrant of this block or each triangle section of this, they come together and meet. So keep that in mind. If you want them to spiral, kind of to give it some movement, you could reverse the direction of every other one of those and they would have a spiral movement, or you can keep that coming in together look. Completely up to you. So with this one, we're starting and stopping here in the center, and we're going to come out, do a feather, a feather, a feather, and travel back down. And then if we wanted them to come together, we would do this side over here. So we'll do a feather, 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 and come back down. There's that one. And then you would repeat that all the way around. I'll give you an idea of what it would look like if you reversed the other one. So we'll go on to this side over here. So we're going to do a feather, feather, feather. If you want to add one more feather in there, you could do that. And then keeping that same direction, you're just going to go the exact same way. Feather, feather. We'll do 3 this time. And feather there. So you can have it kind of rotate around the block, or you could have them come in together. I like this one more for this type of block. I would probably do this maybe on a pinwheel, just since the pinwheel has natural movement. This coming together kind of solidifies the block itself, which looks really well. So this is the design that we are going to do right here. So let's head over to the machine and start stitching it out. So the first thing that you're going to notice on this block is I am using a really bright neon thread just so you can see the actual quilting. I probably wouldn't recommend using a neon yellow on a red, white, and blue block, but hey, everybody has their own thing. So what we're going to start off by doing is using that basic 8 on the block. So I'll move my machine out of the way, and I'm going to set my basic 8 on the block label side down, and I will get the 4 corners of my basic 8 to match up with the 4 corners of my block as best as I can. And then I'm going to grab my pounce powder, give it a little bit of a hit, and brush it on. I'm using the white pounce powder for this one. And just brush it on ever so gently, holding the stencil in place while you do it. And just try to get everything brushed. pull it back and we'll be able to see what we need, which is perfect. With the pounce powder, you can also use best press or a little spritz of water to keep it held down. So I have my spray mister bottle and I am going to spritz right over the top of this fabric, walking around finding, oh, here it is. So I'm going to spritz right over the top of that, and that just holds that best press, that powder down in place. So whenever you're stitching, it doesn't bounce away. And then with this white pounce powder, you can either iron it off, or you can use the Aunt Pam's quilt sponge that we carry, and it brushes right off really, really easily. So again, we are in the Basic 8 book. We're doing page 60 for the design, the one that we're working on. So we're going to start and stop in the center of this one. So I'm going to bring the machine to the center of the block. Take a single stitch to pull up my thread. And then I'll tie those down. Just like that. Perfect. And I'm in stitch regulated mode, 12 stitches per inch for this one. And we're going to start off by doing that little bit of that feather. We're doing 3 of them and then wrapping around back to the center portion. So here we go. We have 1, 2, and then 3 wraps around. And remember, they're facing each other, so we're going to turn this way. 1, 2, and then 3 wraps around. Then we go this way. 1, 2, 3. Pause to move our threads or trim them, completely up to you. I'm just going to move them out of the way for now. Just like that. So that's going to place that right in there. Now, if you wanted to add a little bit of extra out here in the corners, you could come up through the center and do like a peacock feather here and then travel back. It's going to add a little bit more extra stitching, but let's take a look and see what it would look like. Why not? Since we're here, we'll travel up through that vein. Will give us a nice teardrop, and then add 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Now that adds more overstitching here in the center. You can kind of factor that in maybe on your way back of one of these to throw that in there, but that just adds a little bit more kind of tacking down the block on that outer corner, and that's completely up to you if that's something you'd like to do. Okay, so for this second block, what we're going to do is I wanted to do straight lines that go against the piecing and have a gap kind of in between them, some like 2 close ones and then a gap and then 2 close ones and a gap. And we can achieve that with a ruler, so we're going to be doing ruler work on this one. So I'm going to be using the 12x4 ruler, and the ruler has markings on it that go all the way through it, and as you can see, you have different inch marker, quarter-inch increments on it. So I want to do inch gaps between the set of lines, and then the set I want a quarter-inch gap. You can change it to be whatever you like. I just think that one's going to give it a cool vibe. So what I'm going to do is find my inch marking on my ruler and line that up with the edge of the block, and just give myself whatever angle I'm feeling. That looks about good right there. And this would be, I would start right here, and this would be my first line. So I'm going to go down to the right, and you're going to work to the top right as you go. That way you can see the lines underneath your template, making sure that everything's staying dead on. So we've done our first one an inch away from the corner of the block. We're going to travel 1/4 of an inch this way, so 1/4 of an inch this way, and we're going to line up the edge of the ruler or template with the line that you've already stitched. Okay, so edge of the template with the line you've already stitched. Now, with your machine foot being the size that it is, that's going to give you a 1/4 inch spacing when you travel up against that line. Now, I don't have a machine foot on this, but think of it as the end of my expo. You're traveling up that side to give you that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go to the 1/2 inch mark on this to give you the visual, but that's what it would look like when you stitch on the edge of the ruler. So then you're going to travel up the inch. So you'll line the inch marker on the line that you've already stitched, and then you would stitch back down, and then that would give you that inch. You'll come over a 1/4 inch, and this is 1 inch. There we go. And again, line the edge of the ruler with the line you've already stitched and stitch up that way. So for visual, it would look like that all the way. So you're going to have your inch increments. That was terrible. Your inch increments right there, give or take there. And then you'll have to move to the top section as well whenever you're doing those inch increments. The bottom and the right-hand side of the block will always be those 1/4 inch increments. But remember, for visual, I went and line in so you could see it, but make sure that you're keeping the edge of the ruler on the line you stitched to give you that 1/4 inch when you take your ruler, or excuse me, when you take your long arm machine foot against it. So let's head over to the machine and take a look. So the first thing that I am going to make sure that I have when I am doing this ruler work on this block is I do want to make sure I do have a ruler base on the machine, and I'm going to have a ruler long enough to get across the block. Y'all know I love a good 4x8 ruler, but for this block, since I'm doing straight lines all the way across it, I will be using the 12x4 because it's going to get all the way across the block. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find that inch marking and line that inch marking up with the corner of the block right there, and then I'll bring my machine down to it, and this is where I'm going to pull up my thread, because remember we started off doing that first line across this way and then coming over a little bit of a 1/4 inch and coming up from there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a single stitch right here and pull up my thread. Do a few more single stitches. Since we know where we're going to be, we can go ahead and tie this off, and then we can bring the ruler back to that place like that. Doing ruler work, you want to have your machine on a needle down position if you have that option. So we can start and stop in the down position. And then I'll make sure that I'm back at my inch marking. It looks like I moved a little bit when I was playing with the machine. So we'll come up and we'll just jump over. There we go. That works there. Cool. All right, so we're just going to do a straight line first from this side to that side, kind of eyeballing where we want it right there. Placing that first one, we're going to come over a 1/4 inch. Edge of the ruler on the line that you've already stitched. So I'm just going to stitch back a little bit, and then we'll travel up that section, and that'll give us our 1/4 inch spacing that we want. So then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to travel that inch up that I want. And this one, you do want the one on the line that you've already stitched, which a little higher right there. Hold our ruler in place, and then we're going to come back. That's that one, and there are my threads. There we go. We'll go over to get the edge of the ruler in alignment with the line. There we go. And then we go back up. Look how cool that's looking. All right, we're going to go up that extra inch, get our ruler line to match up. And remember, this is all stitch in the ditch, so you can travel up that ditch. Get the 1 inch marking on the line that the last line you stitched, and travel back. Go over that 1/4 inch, Get the edge of the ruler to match up with the line you already stitched, and travel back up. Just like that. And you'll just keep doing that as you go. Getting those lines, make sure you're where you need to be, lined up, and then travel on back. And this one should probably finish us off with our final quarter. Right there. So that just adds a little bit more to that block, kind of locking it down, separating the way it goes. If I turn off the black light, you can see it just adds just a tad bit more to it, but doesn't take away from the block. Now, if you had just a piece of fabric that you wanted to do this on, you didn't necessarily want to do it with piecing lines, you could reverse these directions and now go this way, and you would have a plaid crosshatch at that point, which is really, really cute to add to your block. Alrighty, and last but not least, we're on block number 3. Now this is that antique block that I was telling you about. So a little background on this block. Just like most of the blocks that we feature on the show, I found them at garage sales, quilt shows, flea markets, stuff like that. And I like to try to bring them back to, purchase them and bring them back to give you different ideas of what you can do with things that you find. But just for instance, this block was a part of a full set of blocks, all the same, $2 for all of these. And you can imagine the work and the time and the money of fabric alone that went into these. So I wanted to show you what you could do. So if you found that stack of these churn dash blocks, you could piece them together and really kind of keep that traditional old-timey heirloom feel that it had. So for this, we're going to do my favorite, which y'all know is continuous curve. I don't want to add a ton of really tight, intricate quilting because these fabrics are pretty brittle, but I do just want to have enough to lock it down, but to accent the piecing because there was a lot of work that went into this. So we're going to start and stop here, start and stop there at the top left. So we're keeping our productivity up because the machine needle is constantly moving, and we're going to have our direction to go in. So starting up here, we're going to do an arc or a curve, 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 and then you're going to come down the right side again, curve and curve it, and once we get to right here, if I did one more curve, it would lock up this and it wouldn't then be continuous anymore, but we want to keep this going continuous. So now, once we get to this point, we're going to go to the 45 up to the right there. We're going to drop down and curve, curve, curve. Over to the right, curve, 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 right, and we just keep doing this all the way. Here once more, we're going to curve it, and curve it right there. Okay, so we're back to where we had that dilemma of which way do we go next. So we're going to do that same idea once more. We're going to actually go up this way, down, curve, 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 up, curve, 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 curve. Then to here, 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 curve, 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 to here, to here, to here, curve, curve, curve. Now we've left off the curve here because we have to have some path to get back to here to close this off. But we also have all these missing ones here, and we also have the ones in the center that we need to do. So we stopped right here. We're going to travel back the direction we came. So curve, 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 and then in the center. Curve, 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 and then on our way out, we curve out to here, and then last but not least, we curve out to here. So we have our start and stop in the exact same spot. We kept that method going, that continuous curve just adds a little bit of quilting. I know it looks like a lot when it's a red expo on paper, but it just adds a little bit of quilting to help accent all the work that went into the blocks. And it's a really fast and easy way to get a quilt knocked out if you're doing continuous curve. But again, this shows you the benefit of taking a picture of the block and printing it out. You can find the path of least resistance to keep your machine moving, either if you're doing it on a long arm machine or even on a sewing machine. Keeping that needle moving means you're getting it done faster, which is always the goal when we're trying to learn different tips and tricks. So let's head over to the machine for our last and final block, and we'll take a look at what size needle and what thread I'm going to be using, since these are antique fabrics. So with this antique block, I'm going to be using a really fine needle just to keep the fabric as intact as I can, because it is delicate. I'm actually going to be using a 2.5 needle, or a size 12, which is a very thin needle. And what I do want to caution you on is, when you are using this or something smaller than your normal needle, go slower when you are quilting. And take your time. This is not a race with these smaller needles. They will break in that instance. So I'm using that 2.5. So I've got the needle out of the package, and you can just see how thin and small this needle is when it's done. But I'm going to go ahead and change it out and put the 2.5 needle in the machine. And then I also went ahead and swapped out the thread. I'm doing a 50 weight Masterpiece cotton thread in this one. Normally with antique blocks, just how they were done back in the day, we did cotton and cotton on everything. So I'm going to keep that same idea going. And we get to thread this really tiny needle. There we go. So just the same way we drew it out, we're going to start at the top left. Take a single stitch, pull up our thread, a couple more single stitches to lock it down, and we'll get quilting with this one. So starting kind of following around the outside and going from there. Remembering to stay slow because this is a smaller needle. Way out, and then finish up here just like that. So we've got that one locked down, really nice, super duper cute. Again, having that smaller needle and that cotton thread, take your time when you are doing antique blocks. I hope you had just as much fun as I did learning about these quilt blocks and how you can quilt them a little bit easier. I'll see you next time here on After Hours. Bye!